because that means that everybody can be included, and that's so right. One of the things that pisses me off the most is that there's this perception that because black women created reproductive justice, that it's only applicable to women of color. I'm like, excuse me, Newt named gravity and all of us will fall. Just because you name something doesn't mean that it's not a universalist concept. And so to reduce it to only being applicable or useful to women of color is itself a racist reduction, as if women of color can't come up with universal and applicable theory. So the problem we're going to have is that as we include everybody, there's a real risk that, first of all, that it will be de-radicalized because people don't want it to mean the challenge to white supremacy and neoliberalism and capitalism and all this other shit that it poses. So I hear a lot of people talking about reproductive justice, and they really focus on intersectionality, like they just learned that word or something. And it just kind of confuses me, because intersectionality is the process by which you know who the hell you are. But that's just a process. Human rights are the goal. So if you just get stuck at intersectionality, you're kind of stuck at a navel-gazing kind of exercise, which is kind of where the movement goes wrong anyway. So I guess I'm not surprised people are stuck there. Let me start closing. The work I'm doing now is that I am organizing something for the 5 Colleges Center and the 5 colleges up in Western Mass where I am, called Calling in the Calling Out Culture, which is going to be a conference to learn how to call people in. Because I am so pissed at people using radical consciousness to batter each other. I'm just... we did not create this movement and people didn't die so that you become a social justice bully. And so that's my work right now. I'm also putting together the final pages of a new book called What is Reproductive Justice? A primer that will be published this year. I'm co-writing it with Ricky Solinger, who is an amazing writer. If you haven't read everything, her 11 other books, please do so. So What is Reproductive Justice will be out this year. And they're reissuing Undivided Rights, Women of Color Organized for Reproductive Justice, because it has not been available for a number of years because of the closing of South End Press. But Haymarket Press is going to reissue it, and it'll be available at Clips, so we're really excited about that. And in closing, I want to just talk about a place this work needs to go, which is very important when we're talking about organizing in the red states. I'm alive today because a couple of years ago I got Obamacare. I'm an active, insulin-dependent diabetic. My son was bootlegging my insulin, pretending that he was a diabetic so that he could get my prescriptions on his health care, and then sending me the vials from Texas to Georgia so I could stay alive, because they cost like $1,200 a month. And that's, the cheap ones. And so I care a lot about the Affordable Care Act, and I'll tell anybody who asks that I'm alive because of Obamacare. I don't care where you are. But I also live in a state called Georgia that has refused Medicaid expansion. Because they don't care if poor people like me die. Matter of fact, they prefer that we do because it'll take us off the voting rolls. You know? So there's a method to their logic, as dastardly as it is. And so I've been working for a number of years with the National Women's Health Network and Raising Women's Voices. And I want to introduce Cecilia Science Becerra Reyes, because she's bought a toolkit from Raising Women's Voices that is available about fighting for Medicaid expansion in your state. And that's very important, because this is where we move from theory to practice. How many people are we going to let die while we decide how many people we can't afford to work with because they don't know the right language? Thank you.
Thank you so much, Loretta. All right, next I would like to introduce Carol Chowning. Carol Chowning lives and works in South Oklahoma City. She volunteers as the incoming board president of the Oklahoma Coalition for Reproductive Justice and works as one of 2 Oklahoma State coordinators providing training and technical assistance on Provide's Referrals for Unintended Pregnancy project and supports pregnant people during labor as part of Birth Matters. Carol grew up in Dayton, Ohio, holds a master's in experimental social psychology from the University of Oklahoma, and served in the U.S. Army Reserve from 2001 to 2010. Please join me in welcoming Carol Chowning.
Hey, how's it going? Yeah. So I'm Carol Chowning. And I'm here representing to those of my friends and colleagues in the room that I haven't yet shared this with. I'm almost 6 weeks pregnant. And I don't say that to brag. I say that because I've been having a really hard time physically. And with the multiple privileges that I embody, that you heard in my bio, that you can see in my face, I'm more confident than ever that it is so important for people to only be pregnant when they want to be. And not to have to delay abortion care when they decide to terminate. So for me, 15 years ago, when I was 18 and I was about to start my sophomore year of college in Ohio, I was pregnant and I had an abortion right about 5 or 6 weeks, which is right about where I am now. And when we look at the abortion surveillance report in Oklahoma, mandated by the legislature and found on the Oklahoma Department of Health website, you can go look at it if you want, pregnant people in Oklahoma who successfully seek abortion care from 2002 to 2004, about 65% of those folks are able to terminate their pregnancy before 8 weeks. And so I'm just trying to ground my personal experience in what I'm going to talk to you about today. And so Pink Wave, the legislative-focused abortion rights work of OCRJ, began in 2010, primarily through the networks of professors, students, and local activists in Norman and OKC. But this was back when Governor Brad Henry, a Democrat, was occasionally vetoing some of the bills that were restricting access to abortion under Planned Parenthood versus Casey, right? Because Roe versus Wade is not the primary decision influencing access to abortion. The undue burden in Planned Parenthood versus Casey is. Okay, now I feel awkward because I'm so not a lawyer. That was the extent of my capacity. But they opened up all of these restrictions, which expanded greatly in the past 5-10 years in many states across the country. And so the Oklahoma Coalition for Reproductive Justice is an all-volunteer organization with like a 4-figure operating budget yearly. And I invite you to visit our table tomorrow. It's very pink. To learn more about the 31 laws passed in the past 10 years, just in Oklahoma, restricting abortion or contraception. And so according to the evaluating, I'm doing this, yeah, it's really long. According to the Evaluation Priorities Report from the Center for Reproductive Rights and IBIS Reproductive Health, Oklahoma has passed the most restrictions. So in each category they assess, we have a law like that. But I'm happy to report that in Oklahoma, we don't actually have the most restrictive laws. We've just passed the most restrictive laws because our our state constitution is very protective of individual freedoms. And CRR, together with local counsel and plaintiffs, like our 2 abortion providers and OCRJ, challenges these unconstitutional laws and wins a little bit, sometimes, a lot of times. So the burning question I really want to tell you is, I mean, I told you why it's personal to me, and I want to read this whole thing to you, and it's going to be kind of difficult. So quickly, here's kind of the state of access to abortion in Oklahoma. Again, you can pick up a 6-page list or a zine, How to Get an Abortion in Oklahoma, by Violet Rush. They serve as a director of OCRJ. Violet's on our board and leads the Oklahoma Religious Coalition for Reproductive Choice. So ORC-ARC, if you're not already connected with that organization, operates really great programs like pastoral care training, the Roe Fund, which is the only abortion fund in the state of Oklahoma. But my plug is, too, that they also operate Peaceful Presence, which is clinic escorting in Tulsa. And this coming Wednesday, they're hosting a sex ed panel in Tulsa in the evening. So relax and listen. Know that you can pick up a handout with this info. So if we go back 11 years ago to 2005, Oklahoma legislators passed a bill that established parental notification for pregnant people under age 18, as well as a judicial bypass procedure to circumvent that. So if you can't get parental permission, then you can go to a judge and ask for a bypass of that. I bring up that because it was one of the first abortion restrictions in Oklahoma, and it's a good example of how year after year, or maybe every few years, each of these restrictions, whether they're targeted regulations of abortion providers or just laws designed to close clinics and reduce access, they keep coming back around. And so in the following years, now we also have a law saying, well, even if you can get in front of a judge to bypass parental notification, parental consent, the clinic is now required to notify the parent. So that's sending certified mail at the time of a procedure. And so the result is, and we have these stats, because the legislator made folks collect them, that they, and so the effect has been that there is no judicial bypass in Oklahoma. In the past 2 years, we haven't seen anyone reported as going in front of a judge in order to bypass that notification. So it seems like a common sense law. Oh, well, we just want the parents to know anyway. And it produces, really, an utter lack of access. So, okay, in 2005, the same bill set a 24-hour waiting period. And then we came back around last year and made it a 72-hour waiting period. This 2005 law required state-mandated information, which has increased every year. There's now a whole website. And a host of criminal and civil penalties for pregnancy loss and for clinics not provided that state-required information. And so remember, at this point, that like the state of access, in 2005, NARAL had left the state. I have love for NARAL. Dr. Barbara Santee has been a champion for years. But we had this void here. There wasn't any organization, wonderful Planned Parenthood support, but we only have really one person who's paid to do legislative work in Oklahoma. I got so much else to read to you, and I don't want to, because it's too much, right? It's so much. But I remember that 2009 bill. So this is 2005, 6. We now have 2008 and 2009. These omnibus bills were found unconstitutional, which is wonderful. But I couldn't stop talking to my desk mate because I dropped out of my doctoral program and I was working, and it was so ridiculous to me that we had all these reasons. And so we know now that over half of folks who are asked on the abortion reporting form ask for their reason. Leave it blank or write, fuck you, or none of your business. But of the 47% that respond, folks check an average of 4 reasons. I'd lose my job. I can't afford another child. I can't afford daycare. Not ready for another child. Currently in school. But there are 44, so many possible items that we've checked. And some of these laws that we have now in Oklahoma create a situation where it is now criminal for an abortion provider to continue with the abortion procedure if someone has checked certain ones, like because of the sex of the child. That's a law that's in effect in Oklahoma. And right now, what we have up is if you check the box that says due to genetic abnormality or Down syndrome, then it would be criminal for the abortion provider to provide that procedure. So in 2011, it came through and we had a 20-week ban. Last year, the dilation and extraction ban was functionally a 14-week ban in Oklahoma. And right now, we have Silk's heartbeat bill up, which would restrict a lot of first trimester abortions. It's go time, and we need you, and I'd love to work with you. Please stop by ocrj.org or our incredibly pink table downstairs. Thank you.
All right, next we'd like to welcome Diana Rhodes. Diana Tutau Rhodes is the Director of Public Policy at Advocates for Youth, where she oversees international, federal, and state policy strategy and advocacy efforts on a wide range of reproductive and sexual health, rights, and justice issues that affect young people. Her expertise and work at Advocates is working with coalitions, advocates, and youth activists on policy analysis, advocacy strategy, grassroots campaigns, and youth and adult partnerships, especially in challenging political climates. Diana has been working in social justice movements for over a decade, primarily around issues that affect women, young people, communities of color, and the LGBTQ community. Please join me in welcoming Diana.
Short. Can you hear me? Okay. All right. Good evening, everybody. First, I do want to thank the Take Root organizers and everyone who helped put this space together. It's really amazing. You all can't see it from my view, but it is really amazing to see everyone in this space and for creating this amazing space here every year, so thank you. And also, what an honor it is to be up here with my fellow colleagues on this panel, so thank you. Again, my name is Diana Rhodes. I am the Policy Director at Advocates for Youth, where I get to work with some really amazing colleagues on a full range of reproductive and sexual health issues, but also some really badass youth activists. I had a similar prompt on like a burning question or what I want folks to walk away with, so I'm gonna try to put all that together and get through that in 10 minutes. But I guess I can start like a true organizer with a brief story of self. I don't live in a red state. I live in DC now. But I did grow up, had my education, started out my activism, found my feminism, found my gender consciousness, my race consciousness, my sexuality in the great state of Nevada. Anybody? Southwest? Oh, okay, that was nice. That was good. Thank you. Thank you. That was good. I'll hold it down for the desert. Actually, many moons ago, I was a student of Dr. Carol Mason when she was a professor at UNLV. And she has her roots here, and it is very nice to be back here and get to work alongside with one of my former professors. So the Take Root thing, literally, it's working. But the Neon Desert, great state of Nevada, Neon Desert of Las Vegas is where I called home and where I still do. It's where I found social justice. It's where I found my voice, and then where I fought like hell to try to find people who thought like me, who believed in the same things that I did. And it's hard, especially as a young person, learning about social justice, about feminism, about inequality, in a place that doesn't necessarily scream social justice activism. Las Vegas screams a lot of other things. Not necessarily a bastion for progressive thought and also progressive activism work. So it was hard, and it was also hard working on the issues that I worked on, right? Reproductive justice issues, queer liberation issues, immigration issues. But I found my little misfit bandit crew of activists. There was a handful of us, and quite literally, like a handful. My hands aren't big, it's like this many people, who really, we fought like hell. And it was really important for us, and it was really difficult. in a Wild West libertarian cowboy state that I call home. But I found my people, right? And I worked really hard to build that relationship and continue to have those relationships, to build that community. And it's kind of what you do in a red state, right? Or a red city or a red town. It's hard to find your people. It's hard to find the people who think like you, who want to do the same work as you, who care about the same issues. And you search really hard, and then you find them, and then you never let them go, or you try to convince them to stay, which is very, very important. And you also learn how to adapt. I think folks who organize in red states, in conservative climates, and challenging environments, you learn to be flexible, you learn to adapt, and you learn to meet people where they're at. And that's kind of the beauty, I think, of so many activists who are in this room. So I've lived in DC for about 5.5 years now. And at every part of my career, whether it's been doing leadership development with young people, state advocacy work at the Capitol, organizing in the state of Nevada, working with legislators, women legislators across the country on reproductive health issues, or even now doing policy work in Washington, there's been two elements that have been very steady, two very steady components, and the two pieces that I really want to kind of focus in on tonight. One is the challenging environments in red states. I started my career in Nevada, and I did a lot of work there. I also have spent a lot of my career building really deep partnerships and relationships with organizers across the Southwest, the Southeast, the Midwest. And you all know the nuances of organizing in these regions. You do it every day. You have to be savvy, you have to be flexible, and you have to cultivate those long-lasting relationships with that small group of people who are facing a mountain. We heard it in Oklahoma. We heard about all of these bills. Sometimes it feels like too much to handle, but when you have your people, you can do it, right? And this is part of the reason why I love Take Root. Because you all know this, you all do this every day, and you're doing the courageous work in this country and the work that this movement needs. The second piece, an element that has been consistent in my work and something I want to talk about tonight, is youth. I've always worked with young people throughout my career, and honestly, the fearlessness, the resiliency, the hard work of young people is really what grounds me. It's what inspires me every day to do the work that I do. It fills me with hope for the entire social justice movement. We see all the time the disdain that society, media, sometimes those in our own movement have about young people, right? They're not doing enough. They don't care about reproductive rights enough. We hear it from high-profile politicians that, they don't care enough, they're not doing enough, they're not contributing enough. I actually read, this is random, I read an article recently about how millennials aren't eating enough cereal like previous generations, and the cereal companies have noticed that, and cereal sales have gone down because millennials aren't eating enough cereal. So young people aren't doing enough of anything, apparently, social justice or eating cereal. I've seen them do both, actually. And it's election season, right? We're in 2016. We keep hearing this. Young people aren't voting enough. They're not caucusing enough. They're not canvassing enough, even though all those people canvassing, they're young people. And maybe not getting paid enough to do it. That's another story. So let's consider this, that young people aren't doing what we expect them to do because they're living in a different time. They're living in a different movement, in a different moment. They're living different experiences. And really, they actually are organizing and fighting and doing the work and fighting for hell around the issues that affect their lives. They're also eating cereal. But they're the ones that are truly, truly embracing an intersectional framework because their lives are intersectional. They're living at the intersections. They're living between borders. And we should be listening to them. Every day I get to work alongside the fiercest, most resilient, most badass youth activists. Some of them are in this room. Some of them will be presenting their work later tomorrow, which you should go check them out. But I've witnessed young people work toward better sex education in states like Mississippi, Louisiana, Alabama. I've worked alongside young people pushing back on abortion stigma on their campuses and in their communities, hosting speak outs and events on their campuses. I've heard and I've seen young people take a bus from their rural town to the state capitol to confront and challenge lawmakers to their face about anti-discrimination, about anti-bullying, about their right to use the bathroom. I've seen students take over streets and city blocks just to declare that their lives matter. We saw students here create this space 6 years ago. So when I sit around and I watch adults and those in our movement and the wider society question young people's commitment to progressive values, to social justice, to reproductive rights health, I question those adults. I question those adults' commitment to an intersectional framework of the movement. And in the case of reproductive justice and reproductive rights, as someone who works on policy issues and related to young people's rights, so this is my pitch, while we go to bat for young people's rights to comprehensive sex education, to resources, to LGBTQ acceptance, to a right to contraception, to a right to a full range of reproductive and sexual health services, including abortion access. If we're gonna go to bat for young people to have that full range of preventative services, prevention options, pregnancy options, we also, as a movement, need to fight just as hard for those same young people's autonomy and choices to parent, to raise a family. All too often, we leave pregnant and parenting young people out of the equation, furthering stigma and shame, and we all know that young people live enough with that already. We need to work toward ensuring that a young person that decides to prevent a pregnancy, terminate a pregnancy, or carry that pregnancy to term and raise a family is supported and receives the support that they need to lead a healthy life. That is reproductive justice. So my last closing, to close that all out, I guess my burning thing to leave you with is that we need to not only support young people's full rights to full range of reproductive and sexual health services, and we also need to support young people, youth activists, and especially those young people living in red states, who are living their lives at the intersections, who are living their lives between borders. They're resilient, they're fierce, they're in this room, and they're already changing the world. Thank you.
Where's the camera? Right there? All right. I'd like to do a shout out to Jonathan Fabian in Boston, who is watching live. The camera's there. Does everyone want to go ahead and wave and say hi? Hi, Jonathan. Woo-hoo. All right. Thank you so much. All right. So next, I'd like to go ahead and basically introduce Willie Parker. He's unfortunately not here yet. He's been caught in a travel delay. However, let me go ahead and do a quick introduction for him, and we'll catch up with him later this conference. Willie J. Parker is a reproductive justice advocate, having served as the medical director of family planning of Metropolitan Washington, D.C., assistant professor of obstetrics and gynecology in the John A. Burns School of Medicine at the University of Hawaii. He now serves as associate medical director of family planning associates at the Family Planning Associates, and is opening a clinic in Alabama. His more recent work has focused on violence against women, sexual assault, and women's reproductive health rights through advocacy, provision of contraceptive and abortion services, and men's reproductive health. He is the only provider in Mississippi. Right. Thank you. Next, it is my honor to introduce Grace Franklin. Grace E. Franklin is a native of Oklahoma City. She is a published poet, playwright, actress, and director. She began her love of the arts when she was a child with Black Incorporated. After graduating from Millwood High School, she while at Lincoln University, she was a founder of the literary magazine Under One Sun. She also wrote, directed, and produced her first play, Interludes of Consciousness. Her activism as an adult began with the Nubian Society. It was an organization that focused on educating the community about Black history and encouraging the Black community to be active and informed in politics. She has worked in music and arts programs at various schools, including Edwards Elementary and Douglas High School. Ms. Franklin believes that creativity can extend to activism because an artist's vision is not based on what is normal or acceptable. Creativity can include exploring and changing the concept of reality. Please join me in welcoming Grace Franklin.
No worries, I'm just gonna hold the mic. I'm really just an advocate for women who are 6 feet tall and taller, and I struggle. I daily struggle. Hey, I daily struggle. I'm so happy to be here today. I want to talk to you all about a few things in this time. One of them is activism. OKC Artists for Justice was founded, I'm a co-founder with Candace Liger, around the case, yeah, shout out to Candace, around the Daniel Holtzclaw case, and briefly that case was an Oklahoma City police officer who targeted Black women on the east side of Oklahoma City. And the case itself was important. I am born and raised on the east side of Oklahoma City. Oklahoma City is not one thing. Like many communities, we have different levels of income, we have different levels of education, and this former police officer was targeting the poorest part of the east side of Oklahoma City, and that's important because if you target the lowest income portion of a neighborhood, there's more likely to be women with dependency issues, there's more likely to be women who have had contact with the justice system. We began the organization because what we saw were women being ignored. And what we saw was a lack of national attention on a case that is sensational within itself. You had a white officer targeting Black women who was fired by the police department before you got to trial, which never happens. Where the police department was actually distancing themselves from him. That never happens in these types of cases, and there was no national attention, there was no outcry. And he had a $5 million bail when he was first arrested, $5 million, and at that time he had 24 counts. We were like, word up, let's do it. 5 million, no way this side of the Mississippi you're gonna get out with 5 million. We were so outraged. We were so upset because there's no way that if those women were different women, if they were white women from Nichols Hills or from the Village, if they were younger women, college girls on campus, it wouldn't have happened. If they were Black women who were highly educated and had higher income, it wouldn't have happened because the outrage would have been palpable. But because these women didn't have a voice, because these were women that sometimes even women's organizations do not stand up for because sometimes maybe they don't know how to. It was just, we just supposed to ride with it. Like, oh, okay, no. And then he got home on house monitoring, which is a whole nother issue. We'll talk about that tomorrow. The point is, so Candace and myself, we're both artists. And if we have any artists in the room, one thing you do as an artist is you create. You change people's minds. You can change people's hearts. You speak. you change atmosphere. And what is the point of having that kind of power if you can never use it when people need it? And that's what we wanted to do. We wanted to stand up for these women who could not stand up for themselves, who people ignored, and start this organization and do the push. We did that, collected the folks. We're down there protesting, whoopity boop. And what happened was we ended up with our largest, I think, protest around the courthouse was maybe 150, 120 people, and everybody was there. We had black women, white men, black men, Hispanic women, Native American women. Everybody showed up when the call was made. Everybody showed up when the conversation happened. Sometimes we end up having to say is, where are you? Where are you standing for us? And so with that, as women of color, we want to say that when we're talking about certain issues, it doesn't just apply to women of color. That situation can happen in a neighborhood where it's all white women. If they are poor, if they are uneducated, and they have contact with the system. When you are a woman and you have those three things against you, you are in trouble. You are a target. You are somebody who is at risk for being preyed upon. So the question about how do we help each other is one of the things with OKC Artists for Justice that we focus on. But what I wanted to say first off was you can make the difference in your own city. It was important for women on the east side of Oklahoma City to stand up for the women on the east side of Oklahoma City because that's our side of the city. So if you won't take care of your homes, who's going to take care of them? If you don't go back, once you get your education, if you don't go back where you live, and maybe you move, I don't know, that's okay too. But what if you end up somewhere in Arkansas? What if you end up somewhere in Indiana or in DC somewhere and something happens? You can make that change. You can make tangible change with one or two people. That's all it takes. And the next thing you know, 300 people show up and you got 5,000 emails and you don't know what to do. It's real quick. One of the other things I want to touch on just real quick with women of color and activism, the difficulty in a red state activism when you're dealing with sexual assault and domestic violence. So we're in Oklahoma, right? Born and raised. The best example I can give is that my mother is a highly liberated woman. She was director of the YWCA back in the day, believed in pro-choice, all them good things. When we talked about sex, it wasn't in a shaming way. It was in a very, it's okay, love, it's natural, woo-woo, that type of talk. It wasn't one of those, don't put your legs in there. It wasn't like that. It was when you're ready and it blossomed, But really crazy. But when I was 16 and it was time for the real talk, got a boyfriend, he's super fine, it's going down, let's get it. I done shaved my underarms and everything, it's going down, I'm ready. So that conversation turned into something totally different that I wasn't ready for, which was, she started crying. I'm like, what is happening? She said, listen, if you decide that's what you want to do before you get married. I'm like, before we get married? What are you talking about? What? Before you get married and you want him to jump up and down on your body. I was like, jump up and down? What happened to the love? What? She said, I can't give you permission to get birth control. She said, I can't do it. I'm not going to do it. I can't do it. And she was crying. And I'm like, really? I can't get no birth control? No. She said, I can't give it to you. It's against everything I believe. And I'm thinking, everything you believe? What? She said, but your sister can get it for you. I have a sister that's like 15 years older than me. She said, your sister can get it for you, but I don't want to know about it. That threw me all the way off. That is the complexity of growing up in a state with a tremendous religious foundation. Even a woman who is highly knowledgeable and understands, and she just couldn't do it because of something here in her heart and in her spirit, in her mind. And that is the complexity of doing activism about sexual assault and domestic violence in a red state, because it's complex. And we have to be careful not to say, well, that's stupid. Not that they have. So in a red state, I just want to say that activism can still happen with respecting people's religious beliefs, but not backing down from the issue. By saying, listen, I understand whatever your religious belief is, but no is no. You can't beat your wife, and you can't rape her. That simple. So that is I think that's about one more thing. Oh yeah, one more thing. And I'm gonna talk about this tomorrow a little bit, is our push as an organization, as women, as we learn to help each other and deal with different issues, is to remove the phrase color blindness. We've got to remove it. Simply because the word color blindness still says you're blind to color, which is a little, it's oxymoron. Okay, the point is, you have to see me totally. Me being a black woman is not the totality of my identity, it's just a part of it. I'm also a little Southern. I'm also, half the time vegetarian sometimes, I'm a naturalist, but I have on a wig. You see what I'm saying? It's complicated. So it's important for us to see each other fully. So when someone is Latina, you need to see that and understand the complexity of that. If you are a young white girl from Guyman, Oklahoma, we need to take all of that into account on how we help and how we support. If you are a Asian American, in this state, trying to make it happen and need help, we need to keep that in mind. Other thing is, last thing, and I'm done. Risk for women. One of the biggest risks is incarceration, having contact with the system. What that does to women, it makes them unable to report, it makes them scared to report. The threat of taking their children is higher, the threat of being reincarcerated is higher. And if you did not know, in Oklahoma, in this wonderful red state, we have the highest rate of incarceration of women in the country. In the world, actually. Yeah, it's pretty bad. Which means women here are at higher risk. And we as organizations have to be able to reach out to those special women who need specified care and attention in a way that we can change these numbers, we can change the history and the future of domestic violence and sexual assault in our homes for our girls and our young boys, and get this change. Thank you.
All right, folks. Thank you so much. Thank you, Grace. All right. And we have Mwende Katwiwa, who's born in Kenya. Mwende Frequency Katwiwa is a 24-year-old Black immigrant queer woman poet based in New Orleans, Louisiana, where she is the 2015 Grand Slam champion. An award-winning spoken word and slam poet, Frequency is also an anti-racist and reproductive justice organizer who has spent most of her life living and writing at the intersection of arts, service, education, and activism. She released her first collection of poetry entitled Becoming Black, an exploration of 15. For more, visit www.frequencyspeaks.com. Please join me in welcoming Mwende Katwiwa.
How y'all doing? That was weak. How are y'all doing? Hey. I'm like, I know I was last, but you gotta give me some energy, like, sheesh. So my name is Mwende, and I'm coming here from New Orleans. I work in an organization called Women with a Vision. That's my squad up there. And for those of you who don't know, Women with a Vision is an organization that was started by a group of 8 black women social workers from New Orleans who looked around their community and realized that at that time in 1989, the HIV/AIDS epidemic was devastating the black community in New Orleans, specifically black women, but nobody was paying attention to them. So they said, what black women have always historically done, I guess we gotta do it for ourselves. And they went back into their communities and they started doing a lot of grassroots HIV testing, doing underground needle exchanges, all of these things. And in the last 26 years now, Women with a Vision has expanded our programming to include not just working with women with HIV/AIDS, but also trying to tackle all of the issues that contextualize why HIV/AIDS is still such an issue in the South and still such an issue in New Orleans. So we work with currently and formerly incarcerated women. We work with women who are injecting drug users. We work with women who are sex workers, all under the reproductive justice and harm reduction lens that we use. And one of the things I also do on the side of Women with a Vision is I'm the co-chair of the Black Youth Project 100 chapter in New Orleans. And for those of you who, otherwise known as BYP 100, and BYP 100 is an activist organizing base of 18 to 35-year-old young black people in this country who are fighting for the liberation of our people. And for me, it's just a natural thing to be doing both of them because I haven't been able to really see the difference between the reproductive justice movement and the Black Lives Matter movement. Because at their core, right, you can clap. I mean, you can clap anytime you want, really. But at their core, what we're talking about is the safety, the dignity, respect, and the livelihood of black people, right? And they're being challenged and threatened on systemic and state levels, both in the reproductive justice movement and in the Black Lives Matter movement. So for me, as somebody who's living in New Orleans, which is the incarceration capital of the world, right? And also this same week went to a Texas-style abortion thing where we are down to now 1 clinic provider as well. We have joined the club, which is not the club you want to be a part of. But we literally live in that intersection of reproductive injustice and in a place where black lives actively do not matter. So when Women with a Vision is doing all of our organizing work, we have to center the experiences of black women. We have to center the experiences of black transgender women and all of the people who are left outside of every single margin that we do. And so today, when they asked me to speak, they actually asked me to read a poem. And I wrote a new piece because I was thinking about reproductive justice and how Women with a Vision directly deals with it. And one of the unspoken things that we don't talk about, the populations we don't talk about, are women who are in prison and their access or lack of access to reproductive justice. So at Orleans Parish Prison, like I said, incarceration capital of the world, Women with a Vision was in there last year. And one of the beautiful things about Women with a Vision that I appreciate as a poet and as a storyteller is that storytelling is central and foundational to the work that we do there. So as we were doing our work in the prison, the woman who was leading it in the office asked me if I would be interested in leading writing workshops at the prison. And I said, yeah, that would be great, actually. And so I went out there and I put together a curriculum of trauma-informed writing workshops to work with the women at Orleans Parish Prison. And the things that came out of those writings they were hard to let go of when I left the prison. They were hard to let go of when I went anywhere. And it was an experience that I had never really had before because I'd worked in prisons, but I actually only worked with men in prisons. I'd never worked with women before. And so to hear the stories of women behind bars as someone who was an advocate and working was something that was very invaluable to me. And I put together this piece tonight just based on some reflections that I've been having and worked with when receive their stories and seek out the stories of the women that don't get to be in spaces like this, who don't get to come to these conferences, but who are central to the work that we do. Last year, I taught trauma-informed parish prison. Every other Tuesday, I would leave my office thinking how confined I felt behind a desk, how capitalism had me locked in a choice between earning an income, organizing in the movement, or following my dreams of becoming a writer. On the car trip over, I would always start to feel guilty. Think about how I had the luxury of using prison as a metaphor, how every other Tuesday I would walk into the belly of the beast and when finished, slip back outside beneath its jagged teeth as if it didn't swallow women who looked like me every single day. At the start of each workshop, I would tell the women to be honest in their writing, that what they wrote was for them and it was never for me. I would never read a thing from their notebooks out of respect for their own healing, but after every session, each woman wanted me to read their poem from that day or their writing from last week, and each workshop, someone would tell me one day, "Don't you know? You are one of the few people who has asked me what I think without thinking you know what I need, but right now, what I need is to tell you my story because I'm not sure how much longer I'll be here to tell it." See, every other Tuesday, I walked into a giant casket masquerading as a prison. When I left, I carried the ghost of the dying spirit inside my own. On the mornings, my roommate drives me to work, and I think about the women in prison for taking rides from undercover cops. How we've made normal the criminalization of need, how because she was black or trans and woman, her womanhood was questioned before it was protected. When I pay for my lunch on Bayou Road, I remember the grandmother in prison for fraud, how she ran scams. As I eat, I think what it means when the local prison is the mental health facility of this woman what this woman would have been if someone had figured out what she was running from when she was chasing her high instead of chasing her across the yard and putting her in handcuffs. When I work with my kids every day, I think of how many women that I wrote with who will never see their children again. About the woman who told me her daughter had just been arrested and she's not sure if it's because she wasn't there or because at one point she was. I think about motherhood, how it has always been a battleground. How some of our bodies are bruised black from fighting this battle since birth. I think about the war on women, about which women are on the front lines. How a billboard once told me that the most dangerous place for a black child is within my body because it is both woman and black. And aren't we still afraid of the nighttime and the children it births with skin to match? See, lately, I've been thinking about the women that I used to write with at Orleans Parish Prison. How they were tired of being behind the men behind bars, about how we are taught to see womanhood as a lifetime story, when in reality it is a lifetime of untold stories. I think about how some of us are still asking Sojourner's question of, ain't I a woman? And still, before taking the time to think on the question, they question whoever gave us permission to speak. So much.
Okay, I have a few more last bits of business, and then we are going to move to the reception. So, just a couple more things. The posters from the poster session are still on display in hallway A. If you haven't had a chance to go take a look, again, as a wonderful friend of mine who was a former organizer for this conference reminded me, we are all students, and we were all students. And their student work is on hallway A, and they would appreciate you taking a look at it. And it's good stuff. Y'all will enjoy it. All right. They are still on display in hallway A, and we hope everyone will stop and look at them sometime during the conference, if not tonight. Registration and check-in, for those who have not already done so, and breakfast, start at 8 a.m. tomorrow morning. The opening session, including the keynote, starts at 8:30. So you guys have half an hour. Our keynote speaker is Miriam Young from the National Asian Pacific American Women's Forum. Thank you. All right. And I'd like to do another quick shout out to the folks from Rhodes University in Memphis. Uzak Ahmed is here, Leah Ford is here, Iris Mercado, and Rachel Wright. Thanks so much for joining us, y'all. And thank you for everyone, whether you journeyed from near or far. Thank you for being part of Take Root this year. It is so wonderful to have you here. All right, the networking reception, sponsored by NAPW, starts now. Go to conference room B for hors d'oeuvres and a cash bar. And again, the Furlough Sextet is going to be providing the entertainment for tonight. And without further ado, we will see y'all tomorrow morning. Have a wonderful night, and welcome to Take Root 2016.